I have Triple G as the greatest and the best middleweight of all time. I said that in my last video, sparked a lot of controversy. I want to talk about it. Let's dig a bit into it. You guys threw a lot of names at me. Let's debunk some of them. So why not? Let's do it.
This is high-speed chess. That's what you're watching.
Now, what I want to do is objectively speak the truth, right? Objectively, why I have Golovkin where I have him. When I look at Triple G, I want to put him next to a couple guys, right? I want to put him next to a couple guys. And there were some comments. Let me see. I got a comment right here where my guy says, zoomed in way too much. Sugar Ray Robinson, no, I wouldn't consider. He's one of the greatest middleweights, but I wouldn't consider him over a Golovkin. Marvin Hagler, who is dope. I'm here for that. Harry Greb has no footage. We're never going to speak on his name in terms of all-time greatness. James Toney, which was a great fighter. I'll look into him in a second, along with Bernard Hopkins, Carlos Monzon, Jake LaMotta. Absolutely disrespectful to put him in a conversation with Gennady Golovkin. Michael Nunn was great. He's not on the level of Golovkin. Bob Fitzsimmons, no. Dimitri Parag, absolutely not. And Tiger Flowers, absolutely not. Right, so those were the names that were thrown at me. The ones I want to take a look at is Mr. Bernard Hopkins, the executioner, marvelous Marvin Hagler, James Lights Out Toney, and Carlos Monzon. Right, those are fair. Those are the guys we would consider probably some of the greatest middleweights. Those were the names that were thrown at me, and I said, you know what, we should take a look at this. Now, when you take a look at the resumes of these men at 160, it is evident Bernard Hopkins has the best resume. He has the best resume, right? I will back my point up here. I think page 4 is where he becomes world champion. Yeah, he becomes world champion against this guy, I believe. Yep. Okay. The big thing about Bernard Hopkins, when you look at who he beat at 160, he beat a Felix Trinidad, who was a bit smaller, but still, it was an undefeated Felix Trinidad in which he stopped. You keep going. He beat also an Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar was not the best at 160. I will agree on that, but he also beat an Oscar De La Hoya, right? So when you're looking at the resumes of these guys who beat the best names, I think Felix Trinidad and Oscar outweigh, you know, a Tommy Hearns who was always chinny, went on for the rest of his career being chinny, not a great fighter, nowhere near the level of Oscar De La Hoya, even at 160. And then a Roberto Duran, who is a fighter who wasn't great past 47, wasn't great past 35 in my opinion. He had the one victory over Sugar Ray Leonard, but when you dig into the career of Duran past 35, he's losing to guys he shouldn't be losing to in comparison to the standard we hold him to. And then obviously Hagler really has nobody outside of those two guys. Mugabe was a junior middleweight. All the rest of these guys just were not great 160 pounders. James Toney, whoever said James Toney, shame on you, because James Toney only had 1, let me see, 2, 3, 4, no, he didn't have that many middleweight title fights. That's my whole point with James Toney. He had like 6, maybe 6 or 7. All right, he did not have a lot of middleweight title fights. Same with Carlos Monzon, despite him having over almost 100 fights. Yeah, 101 fights. Carlos Monzon only had 14 defenses. So let's see, when did Monzon debut is the real question. He debuted in 63. So let's see, in 63, let's go a little bit further in the future. Let's go to maybe right here. So 5 years into his career, he still wasn't champion. 5 years into his career, he was fighting guys at 0-0, 15-10, 39-24, 32-26. He's still fighting inside of where's he from? Argentina. Okay, so he's still fighting guys inside Argentina. Even 7 years into his career, he's fighting guys 7-2. Right. So it takes him a very long time to get to the world title, which was 1971, 8 years into his career. And then he's still fighting guys 22-6, right? 83-22. So Monzon would be just a no for me. The only real person I'm looking at would be Mr. Bernard Hopkins. But even when you look at who Bernard Hopkins beat, which amazing, Oscar, Tito, amazing. What I'm looking at with B-Hop is that he lost back-to-back. He was undisputed though as well. Let's add that to his resume. He was undisputed, but he lost back-to-back to Jermaine Taylor. In his first world title fight, he lost to Roy Jones Jr., which is okay, guys. That's totally fine. That's Roy Jones. We cut him a bit of slack. We give him that slight pass there. But at the end of the day, it happened. He did lose to Roy Jones. He did lose to Jermaine Taylor twice, which brings his total losses at middleweight as champion up to 3. Okay. When you look at Triple G had 1 loss at middleweight, which was arguably him winning. He arguably beat Canelo Alvarez, and then he had the draw against Canelo, which we all know Triple G won that fight. We all know Triple G won that fight, right? So he had arguable loss, or really, a draw. I think the second one was closer to being a draw. I think Canelo looked a lot better. I'm not mad if you give Canelo that second fight. The first fight he won, right? But what really makes me just push Golovkin over the edge, because we can admit none of these guys have an amazing, just peak fighter on their resume. I think we can agree on that. Like Golovkin beating Canelo, that's probably the best win, because I think he did beat Canelo. That is the best win out of any of these guys we've spoke on, from Monzon to James Toney to Marvin Hagler, even Bernard Hopkins. Beating Canelo at that point would have been the best win out of any of these guys. Unfortunately, he was robbed. Right, but at the end of the day, none of them have this amazing, overwhelming, pound for pound, all-time great Hall of Famer in their prime. Tommy Hearns, Roberto Duran, all those guys weren't in their prime. Their primes weren't at 160. They were really, really mediocre at 160. But that's why I love ChatGPT, because ChatGPT speaks the facts, right? And we're not going to ask ChatGPT, we're going to ask it for objective numerical metrics to measure this. We're not going to ask it for its opinion, right? We're having a conversation here. We could talk together, right? Title defenses. Gennady Golovkin has the most all time with 21. Hagler only had 12. Monzon had 14. Hopkins had 20. What about title finishes? Golovkin had 19 out of his 21. Marvin Hagler had 11 out of his 12. Monzon had 9 out of his 14. And B-Hop at 8 out of his 20. So that's enough said. That is enough said. When you take Marvin Hagler and Bernard Hopkins, you have to add their finishes up together to amount to Golovkin's finishes. Then it's like, what are we doing here? How aren't we at least considering him as the greatest middleweight of all time? At least considering him this, right? I think we get so caught up in the narrative of a lot of the older fighters, right, that it kind of makes us forget to take a look at who they really were. You guys get what I'm saying here? So when I say Golovkin's the best or Golovkin's the greatest, there's like an automatic instinct in a lot of people's heads to say, no, he's not. It is Harry Greb. It is Henry Armstrong. He wasn't even a middleweight, but it was this guy. It was this guy. You guys are so reactive on your responses to immediately and automatically go back to the older fighters. You can't give your flowers to the new age guys. And I'm gonna tell you right now it's gonna get really controversial. Triple G's beating all of them. Hagler, B-Hop, he's beating all of them. Triple G is the most terrifying, ferocious fighter I've ever seen in my life. The chin, power, just the sheer pressure of Gennady Golovkin. He's gonna beat Bernard Hopkins, James Toney, and Hagler and Monzon will be relatively easy. They're just a bit too old for Golovkin, right? But back to just his greatness as a fighter. You guys are so reactive on the response of, no, the greatest could not be born this era, has to be born back then. And that's wrong. Sometimes that's the case where you say greatest lightweight and you say Roberto Duran, right? You say greatest middleweight, it's Gennady. We're going this way. We're not going that way. We're going this way. It is a newer age fighter, right? Which is fine. So when we say greatest cruiserweight, we should be going more towards the the current day. That's Alexander Usyk, guys. Look at the names. Look at what he's done. So Alexander Usyk, guys. You guys are just so quick onto just wanting to be stuck back then. You have this notion in your head that boxing was better back then, right? So when you say who's greater between Terrence Crawford and Roberto Duran, people will sit here with a straight face and say Roberto Duran, but why? Well, he fought everybody, but Bud did as well. Bud's 5 division, Duran's 4 division. Bud's undefeated. Duran has 20 losses or however many he has. Roberto Duran's been embarrassed against some of the best fighters, and Bud has won against some of the best fighters and embarrassed them. So, man, it's frustrating because a lot of you guys don't want to give the newer fighters the credit. End of the day, Golovkin's my number one in terms of ability. You put Golovkin up against any 160 pounder in the history of boxing, my money's going to Kazakhstan. And if we're talking resume, what makes a middleweight great, which would be how many champions they beat, or great champions, however, I think none of them have really beat any amazing champions besides Bernard Hopkins. And those guys were moving up in weight. Title defenses, which Golovkin has the most all time. Title fights, Golovkin has the most all time. Title finishes, Golovkin almost has double than the second most all time, so he's still number one in that one. And really just the reign over the division. Look at him. He knocked out 17 people straight in world title fights over a 7-year span. That's enough said. That is my case in point on Golovkin being number one. I'm really interested on how you guys feel about it. Would you have him 1, 2? Where would you guys have him? Hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace out.